Hello and welcome to a Sonic Talk special. We're looking at Cakewalk by BandLab, which, if you don't remember, actually Sonar, when it was before by BandLab, is a really kind of major DAW for Windows. Lots and lots of big features, lots of kind of innovative features. BandLab brought it back in 2018, and I guess one of the big things that they changed about it was to make it free, which is kind of the big bullet point. But aside from that, I'm with Jesse Jost, who's over there in the States because we're doing our remote thing. How you doing, Jesse?
Hi, Nick. It's great to be here, and it's pretty surreal to see you outside of NAMM in a good way.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to be seeing you at next NAMM either, because obviously that's been virtualized. I'm not quite sure what they're doing with it yet. But Jesse, lovely to see you. So, what's been happening with Cakewalk since it became Cakewalk by BandLab?
Sure. Well, if I may first just highlight something very important. Yes, it is free. Thank you for mentioning that. But Cakewalk by BandLab, for those of you who have not heard, is the software formerly known as SONAR Platinum. It's not a watered down or distilled version of that. It is the continuation of that. And in the couple of years since Cakewalk was acquired by BandLab, the software had the name changed to Cakewalk by BandLab, or CBB as we call it. And it has benefited from 2+ years of very focused development, primarily on stability and performance improvements, but also some usability enhancements as well. Yeah,
because I remember Cakewalk originally was very focused on workflow. It's one of the first DAWs that I remember workflow being mentioned repeatedly when we used to film stuff. In fact, I'm pretty sure, Jesse, we filmed some stuff with you back in the day when you were first with Cakewalk. I seem to remember. We won't say how long ago it was, but as far as I know, they were first.
We were younger.
Yeah, we were younger. They were first, I think it was one of the first, if not the first, to integrate music publication where you could kind of post it to online services and post mixes. Touchscreen for sure, multi-touch with, I think it was Skylight, first DAW to do that on Windows. Amongst the first with ARA, which is the Melodyne technology. Smart Tool, amongst the first. Clip-based effects, multiprocessor 64-bit. These are all things that kind of came through in Cakewalk when it was in full-time development. I mean, and I'm guessing it is back now in full-time development. But what are the features that you guys are kind of focusing on now?
So, yeah, like I said, we've really been focused on performance and stability. For me, that is the feature. But obviously, usability, and you mentioned workflows, like the whole notion of user experience is very important to us. And as we look at what people are trying to do now, I think we can distill our objectives down to, I want to make music more quickly. And so we're definitely keen on exploring opportunities to enable users to do that. In June, we dropped a feature, probably our biggest hallmark feature since the acquisition, that wasn't just about stability and performance. We called it a Ranger track. And while not an industry first, it's definitely something that we wanted to do right. And we had been thinking about it for a long time. Frankly speaking, we had prototypes of this going back eons ago, but are happy to finally bring it to light. And I think we've done so in a nice way.
So that's it on the screen here, right? I mean, I've seen this before. I mean, there are other DAWs that do it in that way. So you kind of create these block sections that you can then move around. Is that the kind of basic principle?
Yes, exactly. So the Ranger track provides a way to designate ranges of your project by their musical function. So you can see clearly annotated, we have a section called Vamp, one called Bridge, one called Verse. And while they're useful for annotation, I find them great for just satisfyingly moving large chunks of track content around, like so. And we have lots of musical thinking features. Like I just want to swap these two disparate sections, so you can perform operations like that with relative ease. And all right, let me just show you around here a little bit. If you wanted to, so we have some unlabeled content here. We just wanted to fill this out. I'll designate this area as a section. Another way to create a section, if you're just looking to span a range, you can do it like that.
Oh,
And
so
I
it's
drag and create yet another
pretty
section.
straightforward. Is there? I
Very
mean,
straightforward.
one thing about sectional things. What does it cover? Things like if you got a pickup note into the bar boundary, because sometimes you might have a pre-note into it, or is it very much on the actual sections?
Yeah. So when you actually drag content, you see the selection, and it will slice the clip if you have
Right.
like a pickup note leading into it. But we're working on ways to refine that so that you can actually move content around and retain the musically relevant parts of those clips that might actually lie outside of those boundaries.
Right.
And that's a work in progress right now.
Okay, neat. I mean, just again, looking at the interface here, I mean, it's very familiar. I mean, it's kind of, we've got MIDI tracks. They look like maybe virtual instruments. I mean, VSTs, that's all supported in there. And, so if you've already got your own set of instruments and you want to try out a new DAW, you can still bring in what you've already paid for and have in your system, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of where you're coming from, what platform you're coming from, any of your plugins, your VST plugins and instruments are going to work in Cakewalk by BandLab. And if you were a SONAR Platinum user who hasn't yet upgraded to Cakewalk by BandLab, any of the Platinum exclusive features, third-party distributions that you may have paid for, then will also run in Cakewalk by BandLab. Cakewalk has always embraced open standards, and we put an enormous amount of sweat equity into staying on top of our VST implementation and working to ensure that third-party plugins are performant and robust in our environment as well. It's an ongoing. Yeah.
I mean, what do you get if you download the free version of Cakewalk?
So studio instruments are included, a number of plugins. We have just recently, in our August release, earlier this month, added even more plugins. We've added a number of bread and butter audio effects.
So this is a live session we've got now, right?
That's right. So let's just explore this briefly and see what we've got going on here. So within the project, all of the sections that I have here in the timeline are going to be listed here in the Arranger Inspector, the top left. And down here is a sort of creative sandbox area that we call arrangements. And the way that works is you can drop any of the sections that you have selected up here into your arrangement sandbox and just start moving things around to try out variations on a theme.
So it's like it's like playlisting sections, effectively, right?
Exactly. You're just sequencing them. And so, like if we were to start playback here on Vamp, instead of proceeding to the next section linearly, it's just going to jump back and play back again because we have it listed there again. So, we introduced the Arranger track in June, so a couple months ago. And again, earlier in the August release, we added some extensions to the Arranger track functionality. And I'd like to highlight those briefly if I can.
Okay.
So the first thing I want to point out is I added some new sections here. We introduced the notion of section type. And there's a little telltale type indicator in the sections that I already had in this project. So for Vamp, you see VA. For Bridge, you see B.
Right.
It's these little letters in the top right corners of the sections. So to designate a section type, you can just right-click on it and choose your section type. And so we ship with a number of factory-defined section types, which you see up here. I've created a couple of section type definitions of my own because, obviously music creation is a very personal thing. So you're going to have your own definitions for these sorts of things based on how you write music. And I added interlude in Vamp. And so you might be wondering, well, great, you have section types. What are you going to do with them? Over here in our media browser, we have added the Arranger templates, right? And these are just the factory templates that we ship with. And you can add your own. So in this case, I've created one called Pop X1. So I'm just going to drag that here. And this is telling me, you've got a section that this template doesn't know about. Do you want us to create a new section for you? But that was a good reminder for me. It's like, oh yeah, this is just a generic section. I want to give it a type. So this one, I'll just call interlude, and then we'll try this process again. I drag that into my arrangements panel, and then it instantly fabricates a sequence of the sections. So, I've got, 36 bars of material here, and it's now extrapolated into 2 minutes worth of music.
Right. Okay.
So, we can sit there and listen to all 2 minutes of it. But we'll do that another time. If you wanted to share this with someone for like instant review, you could just export that sequence as an audio file, which makes it very convenient for sharing different arrangement concepts. And there's no limit in a project to the number of arrangements that you can have. So we can just drop our sections down there again and again. Experiment with.
I suppose there's a number of things that you could do with this. Presumably, you could use this if you had already mastered your tracks, and you could use them for sequencing an album, for instance, or that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. In fact, I think one of the primary use cases, surprisingly, is for people who record live sets, and so you can use sections to demarc different songs within the set, and you go back and.
Change your
preview them and right. Export them and so forth.
Is it possible to trigger the sections so that you could almost use it like a clip launcher?
We've had that request actually, but we have another capability already, which is the matrix view that provides exactly that sort of thing. And there have even been requests like, well, how can you intertwine section triggering or building an arrangement from the matrix view? So
there is a sort of clip launcher built in as it stands already.
Sure. Yeah. Let me bring that up real quick. So if we go to the matrix view, this should look somewhat familiar to you, Nick. Let me show you how it works briefly.
Project 5, right? Back in the day.
Yeah. So Project 5, which is no longer in development, had its groove matrix, which worked very much like this. You could just sort of set up a list of loops, trigger them simultaneously, right? And it provides an orthogonal way of creating arrangements. I think having the two is kind of a nice, powerful and flexible combination.
So again, that's quite early, an early feature to get clip launching in, because presumably this was here before you guys before BandLab got hold of it. I mean, it's just been, continued through, right?
That's right. Yeah. This was introduced years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, another big thing is, workspaces. Are there, because obviously, I might have a view where I want to arrange in, or a view where I'm just editing MIDI notes or maybe audio. Do you have kind of window sets and workspaces for this workflow as well?
Yeah, workspace is something we've given a bit of attention to lately, if only to improve the usability of workspaces. I think most people, just as you were saying, think about workspaces as a sort of windowed environment. I have my views set up this way and that, and it's definitely that. But workspaces also goes beneath, the skin surface, and actually can constrain or really direct what the functionality of the application provides. So to get to workspaces. Oh, and by the way, if workspace is a new term for you, it used to be called lenses, but I didn't think lenses really did the feature justice. So we've got a number of factory-based workspaces here. For instance, if making beats was what you wanted to do, then it would provide a window layout that's focused on triggering, as you say. So you could use the matrix view and trigger things via MIDI and sequence out an arrangement in that fashion. And also you notice that the main control bar has been stripped away to fewer modules to facilitate a more focused workflow. And that's workspaces with regards to, window management, but there is a bit more to it as well. Like workspaces even influence what you see here in your track controls.
Right.
And I have, this is track controls have their own configurations here, but I just have it following the workspace by default. So the workspace can dictate what I see for my track strips here in the track view.
Right. Okay. I got you. So I guess another big thing is, I mean, time stretch and elastic audio, that kind of stuff. I mean, because that was probably just coming into fruition, well, I mean, becoming more advanced around the time of the transition. Is that something that's involved that Cakewalk has got in it?
Yeah. Open standards has always been, kind of a priority for us. So Elastique, I think, is the time stretch that you're referring to, was recently introduced. I say recently, since acquisition, and that's pretty much considered the gold standard in the industry for time and pitch stretching. Yeah.
So that will enable you to kind of elastify an audio track so that you can, have the singer sing slower, or can you, and obviously with ARA, if you've got the Melodyne product, you can
right. Yeah. I mean, it's very much a lossless means of stretching audio to fill a certain time range. And yeah, ARA, as you mentioned, we recently, I think earlier this year, introduced support for ARA 2.
So that would be does it come with like a free trial, and then you would have to purchase Melodyne, or is it baked in?
Yeah, we ship a trial edition of Melodyne, and I think that's valid for 30 days from install. And then you can certainly purchase license from Celemony and to get the full edition.
So, I mean, it feels like this is fully featured. I mean, we're not kind of skimping on it. This isn't a kind of track limited or anything. I mean, because you're, like you said, it's the kind of essentially the equivalent of Sonar Platinum, which is the top of the range. I mean, you got automation, effects. I mean, what does it come with? I mean, in terms of instruments, sample sets, what do you get?
So, Nick, if I may, let me just segue to you. We actually have an FAQ for that, and it is one of the most frequently asked questions. But let me just start by saying, just because it's free doesn't mean we're not supporting it as though you paid, $500 for a license or $1,000. We're giving it, pro level development support. So that's important to understand. In terms of the deltas between this and Sonar Platinum, it's everything that Sonar Platinum was, and more, obviously, because of the continued development, with the exception of the following, which is Sonar Platinum included some third-party distributions that were based on licenses, of the purchase model at that time, and obviously we couldn't carry some of those agreements forward. So if you happen to have owned Sonar Platinum and benefited from those license agreements, then you can obviously continue to use those in perpetuity with Cakewalk by BandLab.
Oh, right. Okay. That's neat.
Yeah.
I'm fairly sure before this whole thing started, you mentioned something about an upcoming feature you were going to maybe tell us about. Did I hear the word exclusive?
Yes, so long as you don't publish it.
Right. We won't tell anyone.
Yeah. So we're currently working on another release, which I could say at any point in time. We're always working on another release. The feature that I'd like to show you is what we call articulation maps. So in a nutshell, what this provides is basically the ability to apply MIDI-based key or controller switches to your clips, and thereby changing the performance characteristics of the virtual instrument to turn a string section, say, from spiccato to pizzicato. But it doesn't just stop there. Let me demonstrate first what we're talking about, and then we can go into some other details. So in this example, we have a teensy little arrangement that you can see we have some arranger sections here at the top. We were talking about the arranger track earlier. One of our recent extensions was adding multiple arranger tracks, and this is a way to just identify subsections within a larger part.
All right. Okay.
And that's what you see here, in case you were wondering or confused if that was a bug. No, that's a new feature. So So we have arranger tracks here in the top, not to be confused with the similar looking sections that we see here in the piano roll view down below. And you'll see interesting names like pizzicato, spiccato, long. And these are the articulations that I was referring to.
Right.
Right. So let's see. We are looking at, here, why don't we go to the violas and just sort of observe and listen to what's happening. And here you can see a number of articulations defined. So let's listen to the project. Obviously pizzicato. Let's drop down to the basses. Still in pizzicato. Okay, so that should get the sound in your ear. The section A is mostly about pizzicato and has a certain feel to it. And let's listen to section B for contrast. Largely the same note data. Let's listen to that again. Whoop.
Right, it's bowed now, isn't it?
Yeah, so I have interspersed this green one. If I zoom in a little more, you can see the text. It's spiccato, so we're just jumping between long strokes and spiccato strokes for the violas. Now down here in the basses, we've got long strokes, as you can see.
Right.
And then here at the tail end. Loud spiccato strokes. Ending with pizzicato.
Right.
So,
okay.
so it was a nice way to introduce variations within the performance without actually having to create additional tracks that contain the samples that hold those performance attributes in the instrument. And for the record, the instrument that I'm using here is the lovely BBC Symphony Orchestra by Spitfire Audio. So good. So that is to say the articulation maps that I defined here, I created specifically for those libraries. And that's what we're hearing. Those key switches are defined in their spec. And so it was easy for me to simply create them.
So you write them in and then you just draw them in, I suppose, over the sections you want. Is that how that kind of works? Yeah.
That's right. And what I can't show you right now because it's in development is we actually have a little editor that allows us to define these sections, these maps with the specific parameters are, whether it's a controller switch or a note switch,
right,
and other things too. Define the articulation.
Are they held per instrument or per project? Because that's quite
great
key,
question. So they're per instrument, almost because they have to be. Sure. There is no universal standard for the articulation of orchestral instruments or even guitar instruments. These tend to be very unique to the manufacturer. Okay. But that said, there is one other thing that kind of highlights where other ways we can take this concept, and that is MIDI transformations. But using articulation sections is a great way to apply other things that have traditionally been like destructive MIDI commands or something like octave doubling or
so you can
enabling an arpeggiator, and these sorts of things would be generic as long as it's MIDI and you're dealing with exclusively within the MIDI domain. Then MIDI transformations open up a whole new world of possibilities that are a part of this feature and will be when we release the initial version. Let me show you.
Right.
So on the first pass, we have the glockenspiel. Let's listen to it in section A. light yet somber. And let's listen to it here in section B.
Right, higher up.
Without reading, can you guess what's happening? Yeah, right, exactly. So, so in this case, it's a MIDI transform articulation that simply boosts it an octave up.
Speaking of MIDI, are you guys taking on board the 2.0 stuff? I mean, is that something that's going to be integrated into, you know, an MPE? Does it handle?
Never heard of it.
Does it handle that kind of stuff? Will Cakewalk deal with that?
Yes. Yeah, MIDI 2.0 is something that we're following, as well as obviously MIDI polyphonic expression. That's especially when you have multi-touch support, you're somewhat beholden to that. We are definitely going to be working on that, and are eagerly facilitating and staying in tune with Microsoft on that front to get that worked into the driver model.
So how do people get hold of this? I mean, it's free. I mean, what's the catch? I mean, I guess, you know, there's an account involved somewhere. I mean, people just, what's the process for getting hold of this?
Yeah. Two kittens or first of kin. Aside from that, you have the opportunity to create a BandLab account, and that will give you the keys to the kingdom. And it's also a frequently asked question. It's pretty simple to do. I'll show you briefly, if I may. Okay, so first things first. We have dedicated forums now. The new forum URL is discuss.cakewalk.com. And in our menu up here, we have access to an FAQ called Still Using Sonar. But the process is this: really just create your free BandLab user account and then download the installer. So Cakewalk itself comes to you via a utility called BandLab Assistant, which also provides access to, I forget what the count is, thousands really of royalty-free audio and MIDI loops to use in your project, but as well as the Cakewalk installer. So, so you download BandLab Assistant, and this is a picture of what it looks like, and you're off to the races. So I mentioned sounds. This is what it looks like when it runs. You have access to your online BandLab library in the cloud, so to speak, which is if you're using the BandLab platform. And here are the sounds that I mentioned too. So the installer itself doesn't include sounds. The loop packs that are provided through BandLab you basically access them through through the magic of the internet. And so it sort of loads references here, and you can audition them.
Right. Okay.
And
so it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, very straightforward. And so, this is free to use in any DAW, but obviously if you're using Cakewalk, then this is a sort of convenient side effect of using BandLab Assistant to get the software. And then and BandLab Assistant will also tell you if there's an update available.
What is their integration? Because BandLab recently introduced that the kind of the marketplace for selling your music. Is there integration with that? Can you publish your stuff straight to BandLab, or is that something that you still have to do manually?
You can. Here, let me show you. So in the main toolbar here, we recently added the export command module, and the first option there is to go directly to BandLab. And so if I were to give this arrangements with Nick. Okay. So say I just want to publish the mix itself, an exclusion of tracks and buses. Just hit OK.
And that'll just upload to your BandLab account, right?
Yeah. So yeah, what's happening in the background is the project is being bounced, and then it will be shuttled up to your personal library, where it will be private. And if you want to make it public or share the URL, then you can do so through the BandLab web interface.
And I noticed that there was the ability to export buses and stems, so you could actually, like a remix project, because BandLab's a big collaborative space, generally speaking. Right?
Exactly, yeah. So, there are going to be some obvious differences between a desktop DAW and what you can do in a web browser, such as VST support, unlimited tracks, multi-channel audio recording, all these things that don't directly translate to a Chrome web browser or a mobile client.
Because then the end user could bring those stems down and maybe bring them into their own version of Cakewalk or DAW of their choice.
That's right. Yeah. And once it's on the cloud, someone on the mobile device who's flying some vocals, even in the RAW, and then you just download that back into your desktop environment and tinker around with that until you're ready to take the production to the next step.
Right. Okay, brilliant. Again, well, we should reiterate, it's obviously free and you can download it for free and you just get your BandLab account. But Jesse, thank you so much for showing us this. I mean, it's obviously one to watch, I think. I mean, free, there's sometimes comes to be free, sometimes sounds like, it might be less somehow, but it seems that this isn't the case with Cakewalk this time, right?
No, I mean, I've been asked many times, especially at trade shows, like, why is it free? What's the catch? And I always answer, you first have to understand that we're no longer, Cakewalk by Roland, Cakewalk by Gibson. This is Cakewalk by BandLab. And BandLab itself is a social music platform, which, like other social platforms, it's free. You don't charge for Facebook or Twitter. And the whole purpose of the platform, BandLab's platform, is to empower creators with the ability to, develop their craft, those who are, trying to define their voice. And, Cakewalk provides an extension to that for people who are looking to, extend the experience to VST plugins, multi-track recording, and the other, all that comes with desktop recording and production. But what's awesome for us is we're just looking at BandLab gives us a means of reaching an audience, or gives you a means of reaching an audience, and that's a vital extension and a vital part to play in the in the music production, music creation space that we're in.
Great. Well, Jesse, thanks so much for showing us this. We will see you all next time. That's it for this time. We'll see you again. Thanks very much for
a great pleasure.
joining us, Jesse.
Yeah,
take care.
Thank you, Nick.